Mr. Jeff Tunstall, welcome to our eighth episode of Two Biscuits podcast.
Yeah,
It's not, it's
I just
technically, it's live, I guess, kind of, sort of, maybe once after
kind of
it's
sort
uploaded.
of.
Yeah,
The people that are actually watching every week, they're waiting to hear what we
they
have to
are.
talk about each week. I think there's people that might be waiting. Now, the number eight is kind of a special number in some cultures. Did you know that?
I did not. I thought it was seven.
Yes. Yeah, no, seven's more like Western culture, I think. It's like a
Okay.
lucky seven kind of thing at the playing the slots and all that. But, you know, Beijing hosted the Olympics in 2008, and Michael Phelps won 8 gold medals, and it was a big thing. And I did a little research. I
He's the
mentioned,
most decorated Olympian of all time.
oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And met him. I've met him a couple of times. He would
See,
certainly never
if
remember
people
me.
knew that, they would be, they would be rushing to make sure that they got this podcast listed,
Well,
in their playlist.
I didn't really spend any time with him. I've spent time with some other Olympians that I could say that I know a little
See,
better.
I know.
Yeah, it's just but they're all swimmers. I've not met anything other than swimmers. But what I was going to say was, so I did a little research because of our
Okay.
guest today, and apparently eight also has cultural significance in the Japanese culture. So
Really?
it's a special number. So we might have to ask our. I mean, gosh, we hit the jackpot with a guest today, did we not?
We did. We've had several, we've had several episodes. We've had
Yeah.
some people that have come into play saying was, stellar people in education. We've had
Hmm.
stellar son-in-laws who are very successful in their career endeavors,
Yeah.
yourself and myself, and all of the
Yeah.
things we've talked about. But, this is kind of one of those
Yeah.
podcasts. It should set the stage for us going, global, I think.
Well, that could be. I mean, it's very possible that this particular episode will be watched around the world. That is
It
very
should be.
possible.
It should be. It
It's
could
very
be the one that
possible.
takes us and puts us
Yeah.
other in another trajectory.
And possibly, there's some young college students that kind of look up to our guest today. They may all want to watch, and then they'll share it with their friends, and their
Hmm.
friends will share it with their friends. You never know where it's going to go. So we're under a little bit
Man,
of pressure
yeah, yeah,
today.
yeah. I'm nervous today.
Are you?
I'm nervous. I got the butterflies. I don't know why.
Dude, you've been friends with our guest for how many years? Longer than you've known me.
Close to 40, probably 38,
Jeez.
37. Yeah,
That's amazing. I
it
think you
is.
met at Winn-Dixie. Did I remember that story right?
Yes, we went and
And
met at Winn-Dixie. Crazy,
bagging
isn't it?
groceries or working the stockroom or something? I don't know. What were you
Yep,
doing there?
all that inclusive. All that.
Everything.
Yep.
Anything they asked you to do.
Pushing buggies, cleaning restrooms,
Yeah.
all the things that make you a human, make you
Yeah.
a person who seeks out good things in life.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Well, I have a little bio about your friend here today, so and then we'll bring him on. But so same year, graduating high school from you, just across
No,
town,
he was 91, I think.
91. Okay,
Yeah.
Surrey
Yep.
Central High School.
That's
Um,
Dobson, North Carolina.
It is Dobson, North Carolina. He went on and studied engineering, industrial engineering at NC State. Had a minor in Japanese,
Hmm.
and while he was there, he got a summer internship in Japan as part of his studies.
Yeah.
Big deal. And worked a couple more times in Japan with that scholarship and internship, and ended up getting hired by Intel. Is that right? I remember you
Yes.
told me
Right
that
out of high school.
Intel
Yep.
kind of worked in around the desert Southwest for
Hmm.
for Intel, and then finally got on with Integris and working in the semiconductor industry for probably 20 something years,
Yep.
I'm going to guess.
Hmm.
And when he left that, I think Desert Southwest was maybe calling again. A
Well,
very
I
successful
think he
career in
pretty much
Japan.
lived. He pretty much lived in Southeast Asia for 20
Oh my
years.
gosh, yeah,
Yeah,
all over the
16
place.
years or
So the
something. Yeah.
stories that he could tell if we had like an hour, just to hear the stories, who knows what he's got. Came back to UNLV,
Yep.
came back to the Desert
Yep.
Southwest, and kind of talked and gave back to students a little bit of his knowledge. And
Had a huge career change. Career
yeah,
change. Yeah.
really, leave the big industry, the tech industry, and teach. And then just one day, he's just reading stuff, and there's an opening at his alma mater for the putting everything together from his life, the
Yeah.
director of the
Came
Japan
full
Center.
circle.
Yeah, full circle. It's just really amazing.
Yeah.
So Stephen Sumner is with us today, and I'm really excited to kind of talk to Stephen and hear about his journey from Surrey County, a little rural. I mean, y'all, it's anywhere in the world, little rural place to big city, working in
World
some of the
stage.
biggest cities. Yeah,
World
world
stage. Yeah.
stage. So let's bring Stephen on.
All right.
Well, welcome, Stephen Sumner. Welcome to the Two Biscuits podcast. The biggest secret in the world is what Two Biscuits has anything to do with anything. But when you look at us, we're probably eating two biscuits. Look at you, you're probably not eating two biscuits, even though you've had a life full of two biscuits.
I've been told I can only
Yeah,
have
I might
one.
be more of
Oh,
a
is that what it
fan.
is? Is that a doctor
Yeah.
telling you that?
No, no. Some other voice goes, "You're only getting one." I want two, though, please.
Well, Stephen, we have told our few viewers a little bit about your background. Going from Surrey Central and going to NC State and literally just ruling the world and before coming back and all this stuff. And I just kind of want to start with how in the world does and this is, we've talked about kids kind of pulling themselves up by their bootstraps and taking a hold of life. And how does a kid that goes to Surrey Central High School end up working for Intel, and then running, in Integris and running the Japan Center at NC State? How does that even happen?
Well, like all good bootstrapping stories, there was a lot of luck involved. Um, but I think, like regarding the very little hard work on my behalf. No, I think I don't know. I think
He mowed the
my
grass a
grandmother,
lot.
first of all, what's that, Dave?
I said you mowed the grass a lot.
I
You
love
like to
mowing
mow,
the
so
grass.
it's kind of one of them things that, that kind of gave you some discipline. I get it.
Exactly, fundamental part of my childhood. Um, no, I think if I look back at my grandmother, she's got an interesting story that involved her first husband being from Spain. And so in our hometown,
Wow.
like, yeah, anybody who has kind of international anything is kind of unique. And so I grew up with a
Yeah.
grandmother who taught me Spanish songs and taught me how to count from 1 to 10 in Spanish. And I think at an early age, kind of the world was a little bit bigger, maybe than some of the other kids around me, just because of that. So I think that had something to do with it, back in the background. Um, and then, of course, I was a PBS kid. Like, I loved watching PBS when I was a kid. So lots of documentaries, that sort of thing. And so that also, Marlon Perkins, what was it? Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. So you see all
Mutual.
these
Yeah,
people
that's
from
right.
around the
That's
world
right.
on shows like that. So I think, like, growing up, I didn't have any hesitation. I thought, the world's a pretty big place. There are other people in it. Um, Now, for my own life, I never really expected to leave Surrey County, to be honest. I knew I liked science and math. I was always that kid with his hand up in class. Um, and it was kind of a given that I would be an engineer. So engineers go to NC State, right? Liberal arts
Right.
majors go to
Right.
Carolina. Engineers go to State. That's kind of how it was in my day. So I went to NC State, but
Hey,
before
we can't
that,
alienate our audience here.
He,
Stephen,
he,
we
he, he,
cannot alienate our audience like that.
hey, I'm just saying that was how it was
it's
in the
like
day. So I
I
really
know.
didn't feel like I had any choice. You go to the guidance counselor and they're like, "Well, what classes do you like?" "Oh, I'm really good at science and math. I hate history." "All right, you should go to state and
Science.
be an engineer." The end. That's kind of the counseling we got back in those days. So the I guess the other curveball in my life was senior year. We had a Japanese student show up in Surrey Central High School. And the first day of class, like nobody knew what
Wow.
was going on. We're like, "Who is he? We don't think he's from Latin America." So we all just kind of like stared at him for a while. And the teacher introduced him and said, "Hey, this is, Susumu Akutagawa. He's from Japan, and he's going to be with us this year as a foreign student." And so my immediate thought was Japan. Oh my God! Well, there goes my class rank. I know my class rank just fell by one. Because we had this back in the '80s. Japan was taking over. Japanese. We just assumed that everybody in Japan was like great at math and really diligent and made good grades and super smart. So I remember literally thinking that I was like, well, there, my class rank just fell by one. But it turns out that we had the first two classes of the day together, and my teachers asked me to be his lab partner. So it was advanced chemistry, advanced biology, first thing in the
Wow.
morning. And so they're basically like, don't let him mix up the wrong acids. Make sure that he knows what to
Don't let him
do.
blow up the
Make sure he
place.
knows when assignments are supposed to be turned in. But over the course of that year, as Dave knows, I got really close with Susumu. Really fascinating kid. Came from Japan. The reason he ended up in Surrey County is because he wanted to see what it was like to live on a farm. So he ended up on a goat farm
Wow.
out in Mountain Park, Surrey County.
Jeez.
Yeah, so that part of his dream
Wow.
came true.
Yeah.
Um, so anyway, over the course of the year, we became really great friends. I was going to NC State. He was going back to Japan, and I did 4 years of Spanish in high school. Based off of what I told you about my grandma, I always kind of had an interest, love
Yeah,
for
yeah, of
passion,
course.
passion for language. It's kind of, at that age, it felt like a secret code. Like, oh, I can, speak and understand things that other people can't. Came in super handy on Sundays at Winn-Dixie when I was running the register
I
there.
was gonna say he was the he was the only one that could entertain and have good conversations with the delegates coming through the checkout line, and a lot of people were like, "What's he talking about? What's he talking about?" But the best part of them all was he welcomed and made people feel good
Yeah,
and comfortable, and that was
yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, I think it just all goes back to natural curiosity, right? If you're curious about things, you tend to be less afraid of them. And so I think a lot of times fear of the unknown rules people's brains instead of the curiosity around the unknown, which for whatever reasons, I think I was really born with that curiosity gene. Um, but yeah, so he was leaving, and I
Definitely.
remember the week before he left. And in those, if you have to remember, in those days, we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have internet. So when you made an international call, it was a big deal, right? Like,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
expensive. Nobody really even knew how to do it. And I was over at
yeah.
his host parents, helping him get ready to leave. And he called his parents to kind of coordinate like where to pick him up at the airport and all that kind of stuff. And I had never heard him speak Japanese until then. That whole year, I'd never heard him speak Japanese because who's he going to speak it to,
Wow.
right? So I
Yeah,
remember
yeah, but
watching him on the
yeah,
phone, and I was just like, wow, like that is crazy. Like, I know he speaks English and he learned how to pick it up here, but he has this whole other world that I have no idea about. And so that inspired me when I got to state. I knew that I wanted to study language because I just, it's fun for me. And so I was like, wow, if he learned English in a year, how hard can it be to learn Japanese? Boy, did I find out. But,
uh-huh.
it became a passion, really became among my friends at school. It was more of what I was known for. In fact, a lot of my friends didn't know I was an engineering major until my senior year when I had senior design project keeping me busy.
Wow.
They're like, oh, we just thought you were like an Asian languages multidisciplinary studies person or something. We really didn't know. And so I got to have a lot of
How
great
did you balance
experiences.
those? How did you balance those two programs? I mean,
A
because
lot of people
engineering is pretty
ask that, but
intense
it
already.
wasn't
I mean,
really for me trying to find balance. It was more of taking Japanese and my Japanese classes and my homework around that was kind of a relief. If you think about the left and right sides of your brain, it was kind of like
Sure.
letting
Yeah,
off
yeah.
steam into the other side of my brain. So it gave me something to look forward
Wow.
to, that wasn't, statistics or writing computer programs or, whatever it was that semester. So I think it was more of a release, more of a hobby than anything else. And I just happened to be able to get credit for it.
It's fantastic. Fantastic.
So
So at
yeah,
what point
1993. So
though,
I had 2 years
you're
of
studying
Japanese
them?
under my belt,
Yeah.
and had made some Japanese friends at the international dormitory that I was living in, and I really, really wanted to go. So I applied for a North Carolina Japan Center scholarship to go to Nagoya University for 1 month over the summer, and got it. And was able to cobble together a couple of other scholarships. There was a $500 scholarship from the dorm that I lived in. I think I got a $500
did you
scholarship
sell your
from the
car?
study abroad
Did you sell your
office.
car to go too?
Yeah, that's
Did you
right.
sell
I
your
did.
car
I
to go
actually
too?
sold my car at the time to give me some money to survive on in Japan because what ended up doing was extending that 1 month, Japanese program into 3 months by bouncing around and staying at the friends that I had made at NC State.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I did that. I came back. My
Fantastic.
Japanese professor, he was like, "Hey, you did a really great job. Why don't you go ahead and skip third year Japanese, and I will just put you into fourth year," which I was like, I guess. I mean, why not? And so he gave me credit for the whole third year of Japanese. Um,
Wow.
so yeah, I ended up taking,
That's
I
because you
think,
you
to
were you know
advanced
using it
level.
there. Yeah.
What's that, Dave?
I said that's because you were basically immersed in it when you were there in Japan. So he gave
Yeah,
you
I
credit for
mean,
your time spent in Japan, correct?
I
Yeah,
just made
yeah.
the most of it. I learned as much as I could. Of course, I put my foot in my mouth a couple of times while I was there. Um, I guess one kind of funny story is I had just learned the word for to wake up, in the morning. And so I was at my friend's house, and we were going to go to Tokyo the next day. So we were in Tokyo, but way out in the burbs. So it still took like an hour to get into like, main Tokyo from where he lived. And I was going to be all fancy and tell his mom to, wake me up at 7 o'clock in the morning, which the word for that is shichiji ni okoshite kudasai, right? Okoshite kudasai. Well, that was a new word for me, and instead of saying okoshite kudasai, I said okaste kudasai. Doesn't sound like a big difference, right? Unfortunately, that word means rape me.
Accept.
So instead of saying wake me at 7 a.m., I said please rape me at 7 a.m. And there was a flurry of like words and conversations and calming of people down. And anyway, I was like, what happened? What happened? He's like, I'll tell you when we go upstairs. So anyway, uh, learned a new word that day. But that's how you learn language, right? If you don't try and you expect to say everything
Absolutely.
perfectly, you're never going to get there.
Yeah.
So anyway, that
Yeah.
happened. Had a great summer. Came back, and then the Caldwell Fellows program that I was in, there was an alumnus who was VP of Asian operations, and my advisor reached out and was like, "Hey, I got this kid who's an engineer. He speaks Japanese. Can you place him somewhere for the summer and give him like an intern opportunity?" So he's like, "Oh yeah, sure. I've got the perfect place," and it was a industrial turbocharger manufacturing company, way out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, it was like an hour and a half by train to Tokyo, one way. Um,
Oh,
but
wow.
again, if you're going to learn a
Wow.
language, what better place? Because
Yeah.
if nobody's speaking English to you, you've got to figure it out, right?
Yeah.
So I had to
Yeah.
learn AutoCAD. I had to learn tons of manufacturing engineering terminology, like on the fly. And again, no internet, so I had this little pocket dictionary that I wore
Yeah.
thin,
Yeah.
looking
Yeah.
up words all day, every day, trying to figure out what people were expecting of me and what people were saying, and that sort of thing. So after that summer, came back, finished up Japanese, and then the next summer they invited me back. So I went back for a second round at that turbocharger company. Um, and so that, by the time I graduated college, A, I already had good engineering experience, but B, I was functionally, literate in
Yeah.
Japanese. Like I could read and write at a really basic level. I could carry on a conversation. Sometimes I could tell a joke. So by the time I graduated, a lot of that had come together for me.
Hmm.
NC State gave you a good education.
It did, yeah. Just lots of opportunities. Every university can give somebody a great education if the student is willing to take advantage of the opportunities, right? Seek them out and don't just talk about doing it, but just go do it, right? Have that curiosity mindset. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid you might not get it. You'll never know if you don't try, right? If you don't get it, it's not the end of the world. There are other opportunities out there, so.
Stephen, do you feel like, I mean, you tell this story, and I think like a lot of us, and David surely has, and I know I have, we have a chain of successes, that led us to this point, and sometimes it feels to the people that know us that we had these like charmed, pathways to do what we did. Do you feel like there were like obstacles in your way that made you stronger? Is there anything like that that you can think of that kind of led you to that point that even was, it was so hard, but it just made it better in the end?
Yeah, I mean, um, next weekend is my mom would have turned 70, right? And so she passed away a few years ago, but without, you know, trying to taint her legacy, we didn't get along. We had a really, really difficult relationship. And that manifested itself in a lot of different ways. One was she wasn't really behind my academics, right? And so I felt like in some ways she was putting up obstacles for that. Like when I wanted to take the SAT, she said, you have to pay for that. Like that's not something I'm going to get involved with. And so like I took the SAT 3 times. I had to pay for it myself each time. Um, and then, I didn't want a car, to be honest. When I turned 16, how every kid wants a car. I didn't want one because I didn't want a job. I wanted to focus on school. But I was forced to get a job and I was given a car that I didn't have to pay for. Um, and then my first semester, I got into state. Uh, they didn't want to pay. My mom didn't want to pay anything. I did get a small scholarship that covered most of everything, but not everything. So that first semester, they gave me, I think, $1,500. And when they drove away, they said, if you want to stay, you'll have to figure it out. And so
Wow.
that was tough, for an 18-year-old kid coming out of Surrey County. Now I'm in the big city. I'm at a,
Yeah.
amazing university. How am I going to do this? I have no idea. Because I didn't know anything about financial aid, again, because my parents weren't involved, and we didn't have,
Sure.
a great guidance counseling center, at least from my experience. I was never really brought in to talk about any of that. So I would say that was probably one of the toughest years of my life, because I had this car that I was paying insurance and gas and everything for. So I was working at Winn-Dixie on Saturdays and Sundays for 10 hours, so that I could afford food and books. So I had to, usually every semester I had to borrow my friends' books in the same class until I could work up enough money to pay for my own books. And it was just, and I didn't eat very well. Like it was bologna sandwiches and potatoes a lot. So pretty much every week from Winn-Dixie on Sunday, I'd buy a big bag of potatoes, a loaf of bread, some bologna and mayonnaise, and that's kind of how I survived that first year. Now
Was there
going
any
into my
ramen
second year,
noodles
things got a
involved in
little bit
that?
better. Um, I was able to get a
Did you hear
couple
me?
of.
I said, you didn't have any no ramen noodles in there either?
That wasn't even really a thing then. In my first year, I didn't live in the
Was it's
international
not?
dorm, so I hadn't met any of my international friends. Once I got into Alexander, everybody was eating, instant ramen all the time. So that opened a whole new category of cheap food for me. Uh,
Yeah, category of culinary.
Yeah.
yeah,
Stephen, when you tell this story, I'm just thinking of, you talked earlier about curiosity, and that was really the key for a lot of how you are, and just being curious. And straight out of Ted Lasso, of course, David Schreiber. There we go, quoting Ted Lasso again. But
Be
but I think
curious,
about
not judgmental.
yeah,
Yes,
but I
absolutely.
think about your resilience as well. And when you think about resilience combined with curiosity, I mean, that leads you to work for Intel. That leads you to run be a professor at UNLV and run the Japan Center. I mean, all that combination of that as you've continued to be resilient and curious. I mean, now
The
you are.
part I'll say this: the part that because I've known him since I called me as a kid. The part that overwhelmed me in terms of just his abilities to seek out independence was the fact that he eventually moved to another country and became a very successful person there in a foreign country where everything is different
Yeah,
and you have to learn everything. You have to learn the people. You have to learn just how things operate to just, and then on top of that, you were there for pretty much, was it 16 years almost?
15 total.
How long were you? 15, yeah. I mean, to me, I don't know another human being that I know who came from the background that he came from, who could do what he did and come out on the other end of it. so successful. I mean, it's honestly, it's you talk about the American dream. I mean, this is kind of like the international dream here. I mean, it's pretty impressive. So I'm sorry I'm quiet during this particular podcast, but I do want to say, I mean, proud's not a word. I'm grateful and humbled. I can call you my friend. I actually, so you're my brother, pretty much. And some of the story I'm hearing today, I was there with you, but it didn't sink in as it is right now as you're telling it, because I look at it from my own eyes and then through my eyes of my own children, and just it's a testament to who you are that you were able to make this happen, and you made it happen, and you are truly the person that made that happen. There wasn't anybody else out there, you know, helping you out like they should have been.
Jeff, you bring up the word
Proud
resilience.
moment.
You bring up the word resilience, and I'd be happy to take that, but at the time, it felt more like there's no other option but to take the next step forward because I knew I didn't want to go back, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
my back was literally against the wall, and the only path was forward. And so, some ways, I don't feel very brave or resilient in having done any of that because it was kind of like it's all I can do. I just got to figure it
Had
out.
to.
But the interesting transformation is once you get through that, where your back is to the wall and you just have to figure out a way forward, and then you start having successes, and those successes build up, and then you've got some breathing room, right? And then you've got options. Um, that experience never leaves you, right? Which is why I feel like I always still have to do my best at everything, right? Because I know what that felt like. And then having gone through it, then you know that you can do it, right? And you look around and you see other people in the world with all kinds of challenges, and you say, look, there's millions of people out there who have done, at least what I have, if not more, in circumstances that were at least as bad as mine, if not worse. So, you don't have to be that special to fight your way forward because people do it every day, everywhere around the world. And so sometimes having that perspective made it a little bit easier because it wasn't, oh, poor me, I was, born into the worst circumstances ever. Once you have that kind of global or bigger picture understanding, it's like, look, other people do it all the time. There's no reason I can't do it other than my ability to keep trying.
Right. You told a story once, and I will get it wrong. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about this story that you told us, and or told my family, and then you tell the actual story because I'll get the details wrong. But part of your role in your work in Japan was kind of putting the final pitch on a sale for whatever reason, or on a deal or whatever it was, and you had talked about doing that at a karaoke bar sometimes, and that you knew kind of the Japanese historical, cultural tunes to sing, and here you are, this tall white guy in the Japanese bar singing the stuff, and it was like you were the closer. Did I get that close to right?
Yeah, that happened a lot. Because I was the technical expert, but I was also the business owner. So I could explain things, and I could also commit to a deal, right? And so it was, in terms of jobs, like that's kind of fun position to be in, because a lot of times you only have one or the other, right? And so in Japan, relationships are everything. So once the meeting's done, then you got to go out, and they want to figure out who is this guy, right? Can I trust him? There's a lot that happens outside of meeting rooms in Japan, and so yeah, I had a pretty deep repertoire, and it was always that moment where you're sitting there and everybody's drinking and talking, and then the next song comes up, and everybody's like, "Ooh, I wonder who's going to sing that," right? And usually the songs I put in, everybody would be like, "Oh, who's going to sing that?" And then I stand up, and they're like, "No way!" And I was like, and then I get up there and I blow it out of the water, and everybody's like, that was crazy. Like, we thought somebody from the other group somewhere in the bar was going to be singing that, not you. And so it was just a really
That's
good way
great.
to connect and to let my customers know that, hey, I'm in it to win it. I'm here for the long run. Um, you know, I'm not
Did you bring
Japanese,
the
but we got
contract to
to.
sign with you to the bar?
What's that?
Did you bring the contract with you to sign? Did you bring the contract to sign with you to the bar?
No, that's the salespeople. That would have been a little too vulgar. My job is to make them want to sign it later.
Make them want to
I
sign it.
got you. I
Yeah.
got you.
That's great. That is great. So of of here you are now. You're with students who dream of. I'm assuming some of them dream of doing what you did, right? They want to go and they want to explore the world and use their educational knowledge and their language knowledge. How do you encourage that now? What as you're, I mean, and I know you've got to be a liaison to, I mean, gosh, you were there with the governor and that, what was it, either some
Prime Minister
ambassador or prime
Prime,
minister,
the
and
right?
the
prime
I
minister
mean,
of
ambassador.
it
Japan.
was a big deal. Yeah. So how, obviously you have that role too, but I mean, I know what you're doing is for students too.
Mhm.
So what message do you have for them to, hey, is it just like that's what you told us that you can do it too? Millions of people do it. I mean,
Well,
how do you
yeah,
get
I
that across to
mean,
them?
you start off by saying, "Hey, look, I'm from Surrey County. I went to NC State. Most of our kids are from rural communities. We've got a lot from the Triangle area, but you run into these students, and I think without saying it, but saying it, the message is, I was you, right? Like I have your same background. You know, rural community, family life's not always great, but you got this passion for something that's really interesting. So I think just my story, my presence, who I am, that first of all makes a big impact on them because it's not some guy from New York who went to, a private school and then, his dad was working for the State Department in Japan and he grew up in Japan. That's not my story, right? And that story's fine, but it's not mine and it's not one that a lot of our students can relate to. So first of all, I think like just my story itself changes the mentality of, oh, if that guy did it, why can't I do it? Right? And then on top of that, me having gone through it, I can share with them like, hey, when I graduated college, I didn't go to work for a Japanese company. Japan wasn't in my future. I got hired as an engineer in a factory in Albuquerque, New Mexico, making computer chips. Had nothing to do with Japan. Um, but networking, you talk to people, you look for opportunities, and then things start to click, and then all of a sudden, oh yeah, he's that weird kid from North Carolina who speaks Japanese, right? And then one day, an Inter senior fellow found out about it, and they're like, hey, we want to talk to you because we've got this new project coming up, and our suppliers are all Japanese, and we really need to make sure that we get the first set of equipment, and we need to know what they're saying when they, are huddled and speaking their own language and that sort of thing. And by the way, we know somebody needs somebody who understands how the factory works, which is, where I started. So I talk to kids all the time, like, hey, you probably won't get to Japan the first 6 months after graduation, and that's okay, right? I say you got to learn to be good at something first, right? You already got the Japanese part down, but very few companies are going to hire you just because you're neat and speak Japanese, right? They're going to hire you because you have a valuable skill. Being able to speak Japanese on top of that is what seals the deal. So I said, whatever academic field you're in, go get some experience and get really good at it. And then opportunities will start to present themselves. And then you'll be in a position to say, yeah, I'm a software engineer and I speak Japanese. Boom, that's something that companies are going to want to hear about.
Yeah.
So kind of
And
tampering
it's
that,
not just a line on your resume. Yeah.
yeah, tampering that enthusiasm
Yeah.
and those
Not just a
expectations that
line
if
on
I
your
don't get into
resume.
Japan
Yeah.
right away, I'm a failure and it's never going to happen. I
Yeah.
have to, talk them through that a
Yeah.
lot.
It's just pretty fascinating. And I
You
don't want
make
to
you
go
make
ahead,
them a
Dave.
member of the wolf pack, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't want to gloss over the hanging out with the prime minister and the ambassador. I kind of glossed over that. I mean, we should mention that if we're going to have you on here, right? I mean, that's a big deal for
Yeah.
you told us that story. You want to tell our 7 listeners the story of you got the message that they were coming for the Toyota
It's
plant?
eight. It's eight, Jeff, not
Oh, eight
seven. It's
listeners. Okay.
eight.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's eight.
Well,
Yeah, well, it was probably 2 weeks ago, this week, that I got that first phone call, and it was a number that I didn't recognize on my phone, and it was a Friday, and I'd been getting all of these like junk calls about like, did you know that your home warranty is about to expire? Would you like? And so, it was one of those days, and I got this again, a number I had never seen before, and I literally answered it like, "Hello," and it turned out to be the consul general from Atlanta, Consulate Maeda-san, which I had met him a couple of times, but he was calling me from his personal phone, which is why I had no idea who it was. And
Wow.
and then he's like, "Is this Steven?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't know who was calling." And he's like, "Yeah, so something's come up, and I wanted to get your input." He said, "We might be having the Japanese Prime Minister come to North Carolina later this year." And I thought he was going to say, like, can you help me coordinate something, blah, blah, blah. And then he goes, would you mind if he came by the Japan Center as part of his itinerary? And I literally almost dropped the phone because I was like, it
I'm
was just
sure.
so big and unexpected. So, my reply was, yeah, well, whatever we can do to help make the visit, as good as possible, we definitely would cooperate. And so one thing led to another. Okay, if he comes, then what would you do with them? And so I proposed, and again, I like keeping things student centered. So I proposed that 5 of our best students from the state who are getting a new award for their Japanese studies, I was like, maybe it would be really cool if he could be there for that first award ceremony, right? So we had 5 of those kids. We had 5 of our community learners from the Japan Center, our better students. And then we had, I think it was like 10 middle school students that we had given an orientation to go to Japan because they have a sister school in Japan that they visit every year. They would have just gotten back when he came. And I was like, oh, we should also do something with the middle school kids because they just got back from Japan. So anyway, Secret Service, everybody's coming out, doing security checks. I'm, working back and forth with the coordination team on all the details, and it's very highly scripted from the minute he gets out of the car until the minute he gets back in the car. So it's a lot of work, very stressful. The office that we're in is old, and so we need to do a lot to that. So we had a lot of repairs and maintenance happening and groundskeeping happening. And the chancellor is involved, and his staff is involved, and everybody. The newspapers are calling me. The local media is asking for interviews. It was just crazy, crazy life event. Couldn't be happier that I was involved, especially just having been in the seat for 6 months at that point. Um, but yeah, to introduce the head of state to the work that you do, and the work
Yeah.
that I do is not just for
Yeah.
NC State; it's on behalf of the entire state. And so explaining
Yeah.
that to him and our governor's vision 40 years ago, 45 years ago when he set up the center to work with Japan. This is a really special day and really a culmination of everything I've done in my life um, to prepare for that moment. I feel like that I was
Yeah.
really in the right place at the right time with the right skills.
Yeah. It's just the path that you can just see. I remember when you were telling us about that here at the house. Just that what you just said about you felt like everything you'd ever done from the time you talked Spanish, spoken Spanish with your grandmother to the internships to your buddy at Surrey Central to all the time in Japan just led to just sitting there with the governor, the ambassador, the prime minister. And I think you told me, and you tell me if this is wrong, that the kids didn't know, the kids getting the award didn't know that he was going to be there, or they did at the last minute or something
I
like that.
wasn't
Would you
allowed
run
to
through
tell them
that?
until the press release broke, which was the Monday before the Thursday that they were going to meet him. So, I had
Oh
the
my
kids all in the
Wow.
goodness.
huddle, and I was like, okay. So I told you some VIPs were coming, but what I didn't tell you is that it's actually going to be the prime minister. And at that point, I didn't realize
How big? Yeah.
that the ambassador and the vice prime minister, like all these people, the governor, I had no idea they were all going to be there. And so it was, nerve wracking for me, but my job was to keep them from panicking.
Jeez. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm sitting here, in awe of all of this, discussion and storytelling, and I'm sitting here, and I'm sometimes, I know the entire story. There's details, obviously, that I've missed, but as I sit here and listen to this story, I mean, this could be a Hallmark movie. This could be, this is your life, Mr. Stephen Sumner. I mean, it's tremendous, and the fact that you actually even in honestly sharing your time here on this podcast is awesome. But I think the coolest thing of all is that now there's kind of a record of all of this formally in terms of
Yeah.
the progression of everything that
Yeah.
that's happened to you, and where you've been and where you've come, and
Yeah.
I honestly, I'm kind of sitting here. It's not envy, it's not jealousy. I think it's just
Yeah.
total. I guess it's just be. I'm actually. I don't. It's not humble. It's kind of like I'm just in awe. I just really am. I mean, sometimes I look at my own life and I'm like, man, am I missing something here? Did I miss not doing something here? And so
I think you've done all right with Schreiber Middle School over there in
Oh
Bentonville.
yeah,
I think you're all
no,
absolutely.
right with what you're
no.
taking care of
Four-time
kids.
I don't
national
mean that
record
in that
me.
way. I'm just.
Yeah, yeah. How many
Uh,
national awards? We're gonna have a whole episode just to talk
no.
about all the awards that David's school has won
No,
over the
no, no.
years.
Well,
I just look at Steven as a human being. I mean, this. I mean, honestly, it's just. I feel bad because I've known you for so long that some of these details you're sharing today, I didn't know all the details, and those details
Yeah,
are what make this story even more
yeah,
amazing. Your
yeah.
story is honestly, it's fantastic, and you know me, I love writing. We got to write this down, man. There's got to be a record of this. There has to be.
One of the things, Stephen, why David convinced me to do this, and you understand why he's saying that about getting it down, is that in our digital world, um, we don't know what's going to be there for us in the future. But at some point there may be a grandchild, a great grandchild, a triple great, I don't know, something. I think about all the genealogy stuff that I've done and how little I really know about the people whose names I looked up and things I did. And so, future generations can look at it. Your students can look back at this, and their kids can show, here's Mr. Sumner and what he did for me, and here's a little video that I found of him doing this, and all these redheads and brown heads or the Tunstall's and Shrivers grow up and have kids, and they may want to take a look at us someday and see what kind of doofuses were their ancestors. So
Exactly.
I love the fact that we got to kind of put into place some of the
Well,
stories that
let
you've
me
shared with me.
can I share one thing that's
Of
also
course.
because well I'm just saying Steven is also very close to my family and my girls, and they have a tremendous amount of
Hmm.
respect for him. One in particular is in North Carolina with him, and she uses him as a barometer, I believe, in terms of where she is and what she's doing, and he has had a tremendous impact on her in terms of her direction in school. I believe she has changed some of her major because of Steven's discussions and
Yeah.
her respect for him and his abilities to see the future, because
Hmm.
of what he's done. But I would love for Steven to be. I mean, this story is just getting started, and you have so much. There's so many more questions and things I want to ask you. And I know we're kind of up for time here, but I'm hoping you'll become a routine part of this podcast because there's a whole lot of stuff I got to ask you yet, and we're just getting started. I didn't get a
Hey, well,
chance
I
to
love
ask
talking to
anything.
you.
We
So
just
yeah,
got the
invite me back
storyline.
anytime because I still have one life highlight that is especially one of David's favorite stories about meeting the cast of The Hangover 2 at immigration in Cambodia on a Christmas
Yes,
vacation.
those are
There's the
things
prime
that
minister and
have to be
everything, but
heard.
then
You
but
know.
then there's the Hangover 2
Yeah.
cast that you run
Hangover
into in
two. That's
Cambodia
right.
randomly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And not only that, you got and I'm just going to say, you got Allen and Zach Galifianakis and his NC State North Carolina
That's
connection,
right. That's
and
right.
you grew up 30 minutes from him, and then
Yeah.
it's just the weird
Yeah.
connections there
The
are, man. It's just
connections.
amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's amazing. That guy went to North Wilkesboro High School for
I
God's
know.
sakes. So,
Crazy.
anyways, maybe we can put this as part one, and we do part two next week. Maybe can we do that?
Well, we may give them a week break, but we'll be
Yeah, we're gonna
back.
do something here
We'll
because
be
this is
back for
just the
part
start.
two.
Because there's a lot
Yeah.
more to ask. There's a
Yeah.
lot more. There's a lot more I need to know.
All right.
Sorry,
All
you
right.
just basically you sat the fruit down in front of me. Now I got to eat it. So you gotta give me some more. All right.
All
All
right,
right.
anytime. Yeah, like I
All
said, I love
right,
talking to
Stephen,
both of y'all.
we're gonna yeah, we're gonna let you go, and thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it, and we'll be back. I think I've heard it, David Schreiber. We're coming back for part
Yeah,
two at some
we
point.
got to
So
do some parts here. There's too much out there still.
yeah.
sounds
So,
All
good.
right, Stephen.
all right,
Thank you, sir.
All
All
right,
right.
y'all
peace
take care.
out. Two biscuit.
See ya.
All right.
Well, I mean, we have part two already lined up. You've dropped the hangover. I mean, what else? I mean,
I'll be
geez.
honest. Here's a piece I have to say, and I didn't get to say this earlier. Part of me growing up, and I didn't have necessarily. We have our lives are so different in terms of who we are when we grow up. But I consider you my brother. I consider him to be my brother. But there's a lot to him today. I learned a little bit more about
Good.
that I didn't know, which is good.
Yeah.
But it's also something that I think as an audience of people who are out there listening to this, I learned a lot today. Not just about who he is in the story,
Mm.
but just about resiliency.
Yeah.
Just looking at things from a different light in terms of like where you see
Yeah.
yourself and where you're going. And then here's the other thing: the unplannedness we talk about throughout this
Absolutely.
entire pot.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Where his
Yeah.
life was going this way,
Yeah.
and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden it went completely in a different
Yeah.
direction.
Absolutely.
And then the fact it came full circle to where he's
Yeah.
back where he started.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. You got to ask questions. I mean, that is not just a line from Ted Lasso. You have to be curious, not judgmental. You have to ask people questions about their existence. I mean,
right,
we've sat at my most of the stories that I asked him about. We've just been sitting at the dining room counter, at the kitchen counter, hearing that stuff, and it
yeah,
just made an impression on me that here's David's friend who brings the IQ up in the room. Any room he enters, the average IQ goes through the roof.
yeah,
And I'm just thinking, what a pathway, and I've shared this before with you that, sometimes, especially in our world and in education, I feel like my path has been very linear. I mean, it's almost like a card in the game of life. I'm just riding up the card of the game of life,
yeah.
and my friend that I visited in Boulder, his life is not linear. Steven's life is not linear. It's amazing the twists and turns, and maybe there's still big giant twists and turns for us to come. I don't know. You
Right.
never know. Yeah.
Well, I do want to say this last thing, and just in terms of like as we continue to do this, um, it's a learning experience for me right now as much as it is just I won't
Mm.
call it rehashing things,
Yeah.
but I've come to the terms that you notice as well as I, there's going to be a lot of people we bring on here,
Sure.
but this goes back to he's just not someone who we look at and say, man, look at this guy, look what he's
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
He's also a good human being.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
people, he's got there's differences between people who are very successful and
Yeah.
how they get there and how they choose to act once they're there.
Yeah. That's right.
This guy continues to be the humble servant,
Yeah.
as we've
Absolutely.
talked about,
Yeah.
and the accomplishments he had,
Yeah.
his head could be so big,
Yeah.
but it's not.
Yeah. Did you hear the line he said when he was thinking about when all those dignitaries were going to come to his Japan center, he wanted it to be student centered. He wanted the whole
Yeah,
thing to be student centered. He's not thinking about, raising his own status.
no.
He's thinking about how can I expose these kids to something more. It's just
Maybe
fascinating.
you
So,
and I sometimes, because this is, another reason we sometimes we look for while we're doing this,
mm,
we look at the people who we've had to influence us,
hmm,
in our lives, and I look at this guy and his influences on me, and sometimes, you take not for granted, but you
hmm,
don't see how so many people around you
yeah,
impact you and your thoughts and how you
hmm,
do things. But once again, I'm sitting here again to myself going, wow, that is a story of all
yeah,
stories. But, I, sometimes even living it with him to a certain
right,
extent, there are pieces I missed.
sure,
And I
yeah.
feel guilty
But
about that. I don't know
no,
why I
no,
feel guilty
I don't
about
think
that.
it's a guilty thing. It's kind of what I was telling Stephen that, we don't even know our own parents sometimes and what their thoughts were about things. And imagine if our children want to, they can sit down and listen to these at any time after we're gone, or our grandchildren, if we, if you have them, and if mine grow up and want to hear me, I mean,
Yeah.
you just don't know what people. I mean, I wish that I could sit and listen to my grandfather talk about anything, anything. It wouldn't matter what he was talking about. I would just love to hear him. I'd love to
Right.
hear his voice. I'd love to see how he moved, and interacted with other human beings. I mean, it's just powerful. So, I thank you for making me do it. Even when I'm feeling a little bit under the weather, I'm thinking, well, it's Sunday afternoon. I'm going to get on with David. Oh,
Well,
we
I'm
got
gonna
a
be on.
tremendous guest
Well,
today.
I'm appreciative of the fact that you made sure you reached out to him.
Yeah, yeah.
I got backed up in confused. I thought he was in Japan, but he actually came back early.
It's all good. It's
But
all
here's the
good.
other thing. Mi casa, su casa, my friend, your friend. It doesn't matter.
I know.
We're kind of all in this together, and
I know.
I feel like maybe there's a higher being involved in making how this all comes out in the end in terms of
Yeah.
why we're doing this. So
Yeah. I
peace
think her.
be with you. I
I,
guess this
I think
following
her.
week.
I think the higher being's name is Michelle and or Leah. I think that's what it is. I think
Could
that's
be,
what it is.
could
Yeah.
be, could be,
All
could
right, my
be.
friend. We got to go. Two biscuits as always.
Out. See you later.
See ya.
Yep. Bye.